from first bringing forth the mind, chapter 17. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Fundamental Teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. The unsurpassed, profound and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds or millions or eons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Flower Dharma Sutra, merit and virtue from first bringing forth the mind, Chapter 7. At that time, the heavenly ruler, Chakra, asked Dharma Wisdom Bodhisattva, disciples of the Buddha, what is the measure of the merit and virtue attained when the Bodhisattva first brings forth the Bodhi mind? Dharma Wisdom Bodhisattva said, this principle is deep and profound, it's difficult to express and to know, it's difficult to discriminate and difficult to believe and understand. It is difficult to be certified to it and difficult to practice. It is difficult to penetrate, difficult to consider. It is difficult to measure and difficult to enter. Although this is the case, I have received the Buddha's awesome spiritual power and will explain this for you. Disciple of the Buddha, suppose there is a person who uses all kinds of musical instruments to make offerings to all the living beings in Asamkhya world systems in the East. Doing so for one kalpa, and afterwards he teaches those living beings to purely uphold the 5 precepts. Then he does the same in the southwest, north, the intermediate directions, above and below, disciples of the Buddha. What is your opinion? Does this person have much wealth and virtue? The heavenly ruler Chakra said, disciple of the Buddha, only the Buddha can know this person's merit and virtue. All others are unable to fathom it. Dharma Wisdom Bodhisattva said, disciple of the Buddha, this person's merit and virtue, when compared with the merit and virtue of the Bodhisattva, who has first brought forth the mind, does not equal 100th part of it, nor 1,000th part, nor 100,000th part, or so forth up to the point that it does not equal the 100 million parts. No 100 billion part, no 1 trillion part, no Nayuta 100 million part, no 1 billion Nayuta part, no 100 billion Nayuta part, no 1 trillion Nayuta part, no numberable part, no current part, no calculable part, no analogical part, nor even a part of an Upanishad part. Disciple of the Buddha, moreover, putting this analogy aside, suppose there is a person who uses all kinds of musical instruments to make offerings to all the living beings in 10 Asamkhya world systems in the 10 directions for 100 kalpas, and afterwards he teaches those living beings to cultivate the 10 paths of good, making offerings to the same way for 1,000 kalpas. He then teaches them to dwell in the 4 dhyanas after passing through 100,000 kalpas. He teaches them to dwell in the 4 unlimited minds, passing through 100 million kalpas. He teaches them to dwell in the 4 formless samadhi. Then after passing through 1 million kalpas, he teaches them to dwell in the Shvatamphana fruit. Then after passing through 100 billion kalpas, he teaches them to dwell in the Shakrikdagamin fruit. Then after passing through a trillion kalpas, he teaches them to dwell in the anagaman fruits. Then after passing through 100 million kalpas, he teaches them to dwell in the arhat fruits. Then after passing through 100,000 trillion kalpas, he teaches them to dwell in the path of a Prajeka Buddha. Disciple of the Buddha, what is your opinion? Isn't this person's merit and virtue a lot? The heavenly ruler said, disciple of the Buddha, only the Buddha can know this person's merit and virtue. Dharma wisdom Bodhisattva said, disciple of the Buddha, this person's merit and virtue compared with the merit and virtue of the Bodhisattva, who has first brought forth the mind, does not come up to 100th part, nor 1,000th part, nor 100,000th part, up to and including not one part in an Upanishad. Why is this disciple of the Buddha? When all Buddhas first bring forth the mind, they do not do so merely for the sake of making offerings of all kinds of musical instruments to all the living beings in 10 Asamkhya world systems in the 10 directions, doing so for 100 kalpas, up to and including 100,000 million kalpas. They do not bring forth the Bodhi mind merely to teach all of those living beings to cultivate the 5 precepts, to teach them to dwell in the 4 dhyanas, the 4 unlimited minds, the 4 formless concentrations, or to teach them to attain the Srotapanna fruits, the Sakritagamin fruits, the Anagaman fruits, the Arhat fruit, or the Prajeka Buddha path. But it is for the sake of causing the seed nature of the thus come ones to never be cut off. It is for the sake of pervading all world systems. It is for the sake of crossing over the liberating the living beings in all world systems. It is for the sake of totally knowing the coming into being and destruction of all world systems. It is for the sake of totally knowing the defilement and purity of living beings within all world systems. Is for the sake of totally knowing the purity of the self-nature of all world systems. It is for the sake of totally knowing the likes, afflictions, and happiness in the minds of all living beings. It is for the sake of totally knowing how all living beings die here and are reborn elsewhere. It is for the sake of totally knowing all living beings' rules and expedient methods. It is for the sake of total knowing the activities in the minds of all living beings. It is for the sake of total knowing all living beings' wisdom in the 3 periods of time. And it is for the sake of equality that they bring forth the unsurpassed Bodhi mind. Putting this analogy aside, suppose there is a person who within the space of a single thought is able to pass through Asamkhya world systems in the East. He does so in thought after thought like this, exhausting Asamkhya kalpas. No one is able to know the limits of all the world systems. He passes through further. Suppose there is a second person who is able to, in the space of a single thought, pass through all the world system, pass through by the first person in Asamkhya kalpas. He too passes through so many worlds, exhausting Asamkhya kalpas. This sequence increases until it reaches a 10th person in the southwest north, the 4th intermediaries above and below. The same thing happens, disciple of the Buddha. In the 10 directions there are a total of 100 people, and each one passes through world systems in the same way. The limits of these world systems can be known, yet no one is able to know the limits of the good works of the Bodhisattva who has first brought forth the mind of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Why is the disciple of the Buddha? The Bodhisattva does not limit him but himself. For the sake of going to that many world system to attain understanding and knowledge, he brings forth the Bodhi mind. For the sake of understanding the world systems of the 10 directions, he brings forth the Bodhi mind. That is to say, he desires to understand what wonderful world systems are just cause world systems.
And course world system are just wonderful world system. World system which face upward are just overturned world system. And overturned world system are just world system which face upwards.
Small world systems are just great world systems, and great world systems are just small world systems. Wide world systems are just narrow world systems. And narrow world systems are just wide world systems. A single world system is just ineffable world systems, and ineffable world systems are just a single world system. Ineffable world system enters a single world system, and a single world system enters ineffable world system. Defiled world systems are just pure world system, and pure world systems are just pure world systems. And pure world systems are just defiled world system. He desires to know that within the tip of a single hair, there are all the world systems, different natures, and within all world systems, there is the single substantial nature of a single tip of a head. He desires to know that within a single world system there comes into being all world systems, and he desires to know that all world systems are without a substantial nature, because he desires in a single thought to exhaustively know all the vast and great world systems without obstructions. He brings for the mind of Avatamsaka Sambodhi, disciple of the Buddha. Moreover, putting his analogy aside, suppose there is a person who in a single thought moment is able to know the number of kalpas of coming into being and destruction of a Samkhya world system in the east, and each thought is like this to the exhaustion of a Samkhya kalpas.
There is no one who is able to know the limit of the number of these kalpas. Suppose there is a second person who in the second thought is able to know the number of kalpas. The former person knew inside a Samkhya kalpas. In the same way, expand until it reaches the 10th person. In the southwest and north and the four intermediaries above and below, it is also like this. Disciples of the Buddha.
The limit of the number of the kalpas of coming into being and destruction of those Samkhya world systems in the 10 directions can be known, yet the limit of the merit, virtue, and good works of the Bodhisattva, who first brings forth the mind for Avatamsaka Sambodhi, cannot be known. Why? Because the Bodhisattva has no uniform limits. He brings forth the mind for Avatamsaka Sambodhi only for the sake of knowing the number of kalpas or coming into being and destruction of those world systems. He brings forth the mind for Avatamsaka Sambodhi in order to totally know the kalpas of coming into being and destruction of all world systems exhaustively without remainder.
That is to say, he knows that long kalpas are equal to short kalpa, and short kalpa are equal to long kalpas. A single kalpa is equal to countless kalpa, and countless kalpa are equal to single kalpa. Kalpa which have Buddha are equal to kalpa which do not have Buddhas, and kalpa which do not have Buddha are equal to kalpa which has Buddha. Within a kalpa with a single Buddha, there are ineffable Buddhas, and within a kalpa with ineffable Buddha, there is a single Buddha.
Measurable kalpas are equal to measureless kalpas, and measureless kalpas are equal to measurable kalpas, exhaustible kalpas. equal to inexhaustible kalpas, and inexhaustible kalpas are equal to exhaustible kalpas. Ineffable kalpas are equal to a single thought, and a single thought is equal to ineffable kalpas. All kalpas and the non-kalpas, and non-kalpas and all kalpas. Because he desires to, within a single thought, inexhaustible know the kalpas are coming into being, and destruction of all world systems in the past, present, and in the future. He brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samyap Sambodhi. This is called the adornment of great vows of first bringing forth the mind, the spiritual penetration and wisdom which comprehend all kalpas. Disciples of the Buddha, putting this analogy aside, suppose there is a person who in a single thought moment is able to know all the various different understandings of all living beings in the Sankhya world systems in the East, and he does so in thought after thought, exhausting Asankhya kalpas. Suppose there is a second person who within a single thought moment is able to know all the different understandings of the living beings, which the first person knew in Asankhya kalpas, and he too does so, exhausting Asankhya kalpas. In the same way, expand this until it reaches the 10th person. In the south, west, and north, the four intermediaries, above and below, it is also like this. Disciple of the Buddha, the limits of the various different understandings of those living beings in the 10 directions can be known, but no one is able to know the limits of the merit and virtue and good words of the Bodhisattva, who first brings forth the mind for Antara Sanyap Sambodhi.
Why is this disciple of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, has known uniform limit? In order to know those living beings' understandings, he brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi. He brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi. In order to exhaustively know the various different understanding of all living beings in all world systems, that is to say, because he desired to know all the different understanding without boundary, because he desired to know a single living being's understanding is equal to countless living beings' understandings, because he desired to totally know each of the different understanding of the ocean of living beings exhaustively without remainder.
Because he desired to know living beings' various limitless understandings of the past, present, and future, whether good or bad, because he desires to totally know their similar understandings and their similar understandings, because he desires to totally know that understandings all is just understanding one, and understanding one is just understanding all, because he desires to obtain the thus come one's powers of understanding. It is because he desires to totally know the understanding which is unsurpassed and the unsurpassed understanding, the understanding which has a remainder and the understanding which has no remainder, the differences of the equal understanding and the equal understanding. It is because he desires to totally know the understanding which relies on something and the understanding which has no reliance, the understanding which is common and the uncommon understanding, the understanding which has a boundary and understanding which has no boundary, discriminatory understandings and non-discriminatory understandings, good understandings and the understandings which are not good, and worldly understanding and the understandings which are beyond the world. It is because he desired to obtain the unobstructed wisdom of the thus come one's liberations of all wondrous understandings, great understanding, limitless understandings, and understanding of the proper position. It is because he desires to use limitless experience to totally know the realm of all living beings in the 10 directions, and each living being's pure understanding, divine understanding, broad understanding, general understanding, detailed understandings, and coarse understandings, exhaustively without remainder. It is because he desires to totally know profound, exoteric understanding or expedient methods, discrete discriminating understandings, spontaneous understandings, understanding which arise in accordance with causes, understanding which arise according to condition, and the natural understandings, totally with the remainder that he brings forth, the mind for Antara Samyam Sambodhi.
Disciple of the Buddha, putting this analogy aside, suppose there is a person who within a simple thought moment is able to know all the different rules of all living beings in countless world systems in this. In thought after thought like this, he passes through some Samkhya kalpas. Suppose there is a second person who within a single thought moment is able to know all the different rules which the person before knew. In thought after thought for a Samkhya kalpas. In the same way, extend this until it reaches to a 10th person. In the southwest and north, the four intermediaries above and below, it is also like this.
Disciple of the Buddha, the boundaries of all the different worlds of all the living beings in this world system in the 10 directions can be known. But no one is able to know the boundaries of the merit, virtue, and good works of the Bodhisattva, who first brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Why is there? It is because Bodhisattva has no uniform limit. It is only for the sake of knowing all the roots of the living beings in those worlds that he brings for the mind for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. It is for the sake of exhaustively knowing within our world system all the various different worlds of all living beings, and speaking broadly, it is because he desires to exhaustively know up to and including the natural roots that he brings for the mind for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Disciple of the Buddha, putting this analogy aside, suppose there is a person who in a single thought moment is able to know all the various desires and pleasures of all the living beings in countless world systems in the East, in thought after thought. Like this, he exhausts a Samkhya kalpas. In succession, extend this until it reaches to a 10th person. In the southwest and north, the fourth intermediaries above and below. It is also the same way. The limits of the desires and pleasures of all these living beings in the 10 directions can be known, but no one is able to know the limits of the merit and virtue and good works of the Bodhisattva, who first brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Why is the disciple the Buddha? The Bodhisattva does not limit himself. He brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, only for the sake of knowing all of those living beings' desires and pleasures. It is for the sake of exhaustively knowing all the various desires and pleasures of all living beings in all world systems, and speaking extensively, it is because he desires to exhaustively know up to and including the natural desires and pleasures that he brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Disciples of the Buddha, putting this analogy aside, suppose there is a person who within a single thought moment is able to know all the various expedient methods of the living beings in countless world systems in the East. In succession, extend this until it reaches to a 10th person. In the southwest and north, the four intermediaries above and below, it is also like this.
The limits of the various expedient matter of this living being in the 10 directions can be known, but no one is able to know the limit of the merit and virtue and good rules of the Bodhisattva, who first bring forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi. Why is this? Disciple of the Buddha? The Bodhisattva has no uniform limit. He brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi, only for the sake of knowing the various expedient methods of the living being in those world systems. It is in order to exhaustively know the various expedient methods of all living beings in all world systems, and speaking extensively, it is because he desires to exhaustively know the net of all expedient methods that he brings forth the mind of Anuttara Samya Sambodhi. Disciples of the Buddha, putting this analogy aside, suppose there's a person who is in single thought moment is able to know the various different kinds of mind of all the living beings in countless world system in the earth. Ascend this until it reaches to the world system of the 10 directions. The limits of all those living beings, various different minds can be known, but no one is able to know the limit of merit and virtue of the good fruits of the Bodhisattva who first bring forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi.
Why is this disciple of the Buddha? The Bodhisattva has no uniform limits. He brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi, only for the sake of knowing those living beings' minds. It is for the sake of knowing to the exhaustion of the Dharma realm and the riches of space, the various minds of boundless living beings, up to and including wishing to exhaustively know the nature of all minds, that he brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi. Disciple of the Buddha, putting this analogy aside, suppose there is a person who, within a single thought moment, can know the various different kinds of living beings in countless world systems in the East. Extend this until the limits of the various different karma of the living beings in the 10 directions can be known. But of the Bodhisattva who first brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi, the limits of his good roots cannot be known. Why is this? Disciple the Buddha. The Bodhisattva has no uniform limits. He brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi, only for the sake of knowing the living beings' karma, and because he desires to totally know the karma of all living beings, of the 3 bits of time, up to and including wishing to totally know the nature of all karma. Disciple of the Buddha, putting this analogy aside, suppose there is a person who in a single thought moment is able to know the various afflictions of all the living beings in countless world systems in the East. In thought after thought, he does so, exhausting Avatamsaka kalpas. There is no one who is able to know the limits of these various afflictions. And suppose there is second person who within a single thought moment is able to know all of the different afflictions of the living beings, which the previous person knew in Avatamsaka kalpas. He also does so to the exhaustion of Avatamsaka kalpas. In succession extended until it reaches a 10th person. In the southwest and north, the 4 intermediaries above and below. It is also like this. Disciple of the Buddha, the limits of the different afflictions of these living beings in the 10 directions can be known, but the limits of the good roots of the Bodhisattva who first brings forth the mind of Anuttara Samya Sambodhi cannot be known.
Why is this? Disciples of the Buddha.
The Bodhisattva has no uniform limits. He brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi, only for the sake of knowing the afflictions of the living beings in those world systems. He brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samya Sambodhi in order to exhaustively know the different afflictions of all living beings in all world systems. That is to say, it is because he desires to exhaustively know the light afflictions, heavy afflictions, afflictions of sleep, afflictions of arisal or living beings, limitless afflictions, including their various differences and various awarenesses and contemplations, and to cause them to purify all of their defilements. It is because he desires to exhaustively know the afflictions which rely on ignorance, the afflictions that interact with love, and to cut off the know of the afflictions of all these destinies. It is because he desires to exhaustively know the afflictions of the share of greed, the afflictions of the share of anger, the afflictions of the share of stupidity, and afflictions of the share of an equal share of all of these, and to cut off the roots of all afflictions. It is because he desires to completely know the afflictions of self, the afflictions of what belongs to self, the afflictions of the arrogance of self, and to enlighten to all afflictions exhaustively with the remainder. It is because he desires to completely know both the fundamental afflictions and subsidiary afflictions, which are produced from upside-down discriminations. It is because he wishes to subdue all afflictions. There being 62 kinds of feels that arise from the view of a body.
It is because
He desires to completely know the afflictions or coverings and the afflictions of obstructions that he brings forth a mind of great compassion and of rescuing and protecting. And it is in order to cut asunder the net of all afflictions and to cause the nature of all wisdom to be purified that he brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Disciple the Buddha, putting this analogy aside, suppose there is a person who, in a single thought moment, uses all kinds of superior tasting food, incense, flower, clothing, streamers, canopies, as well as Sangaramas and supreme and wondrous palaces, jeweled curtains, nets and screens, and different kinds of adorned iron throne, as well as multiple or wondrous jewels to make offerings to countless Buddhas in the East, as well as all of the living beings in countless world systems. He reveres and venerates, worships and praises them, and he bows to and gazes up at them continuously without cease, passing through countless kalpas, and he exalts those living beings to all make offerings to the Buddhas, up to the point that after those Buddhas' extinction, they erect stupas for each one of them. Those pagodas are high and vast as countless worlds, and are made of jewels and have various kinds of adornments. Within each pagoda there are images of countless Tuscan ones, whose light shines everywhere in countless world systems, passing through countless kalpas in the south, north, and west, the four intermediaries above and below. It is also like the disciple of the Buddha. What do you think? Does this person have much merit and virtue? The heavenly ruler Chakra said, only the Buddha can know this person's merit and virtue. All others are not able to fathom it. Disciple of the Buddha, this person's merit and virtue, compared with the merit and virtue of the Bodhisattva who first brings forth in mind, does not reach 100th part, nor 1,000th part, nor 100,000th part, up to the point that it does not reach one part in an Upanishad.
Disciple of the Buddha, putting this analogy aside, suppose there is a second person who within a single thought is able to do what the person before him did, as well as the art of making offering which all the living beings, countless world systems perform throughout countless kalpa. In thought after thought like this, he uses limitless kinds of articles of offerings to make offering throughout limitless kalpa to limitless Buddha, the dust-come worms, as well as to all living beings in limitless world system.
Further, suppose there is a third person, up to the point that there is a 10th person, and they are all like this. Within a single thought they make all the offerings which the person before them made in thought after thought. They use boundless, unequaled, uncountable, inestimable, inconceivable, immeasurable, ineffably ineffable articles of offering to make offerings to boundless, up to and including ineffably ineffable Buddhas, as well as all the living beings in those world systems, doing so for boundless kalpas, up to and including ineffably ineffable kalpas. And after those Buddhas' extinction, they erect a stupa for each one of them. Each stupa is high and fast, and in the same way abiding for kalpas. Disciple the Buddha, the aforementioned merit virtue, when compared with the merit virtue of the Bodhisattva, who first brings forth their mind, does not equal 100th part, nor 1,000th part, nor 100,000th part, up to and including it does not equal one part in an Upanishad. Why is this disciple the Buddha? The Bodhisattva Mahasattva has no uniform limits. He brings forth the mind of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi only for the sake of making offerings to those Buddhas. He brings forth the mind for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi to make offerings to all of the limitless, ineffably ineffable Buddhas. In exhausting the Dharma realm and the realm of space throughout the 10 directions in the past, present, and future. After bringing forth this mind, he is able to know the first realization of the right enlightenment up to the nirvana of the Buddhas of the past. He is able to believe in all of the good words of all Buddha of the future, and he is able to know all of the wisdom of all Buddhas of the present. This Bodhisattva is able to believe in the merit and virtue of those Buddhas. He is able to accept it, cultivate it, obtain it, know it, be certified to it, and perfect it. It is able to be of an equal single nature with all Buddhas. Why is this? The Bodhisattva brings forth the mind so that the seed nature of all thus come when is not cut off.
Even for the mind in order to fill up all world system, even for the mind in order to cross over and liberate the really being of all world system, even for the mind in order to totally know the coming into being and destruction of all world system, even for the mind in order to totally know the defilement and purity of all living beings, even for the mind in order to totally know purity of all world system in the three realms of existence, even for the mind in order to totally know the pleasure, affliction, and habit in the mind of all living beings. He brings forth the mind in order to totally know about that in one place and rebirth elsewhere of all living beings. He brings forth the mind in order to totally know the expedient matter of all living beings' faculties. He brings forth the mind in order to totally know the activity in the minds of all living beings. He brings forth the mind in order to totally know the wisdom of 3 periods of time.
Because he brings forth the mind of the Buddhas in the 3 periods of time are mindful of him, he will obtain the unsurpassed body of all Buddhas of the 3 periods of time, and then all Buddhas of the 3 periods of time will bestow upon him the wondrous Dharma. He will have an equal substance and nature will all Buddhas of the 3 periods of time. He has already cultivated the dharmas which aid the path of all bodhisattvas of the 3 periods of time. So he accomplishes the powers of fearlessness of all bodhisattvas of the 3 periods of time. He adorns the uncommon Buddha dharmas of all bodhisattvas of the 3 periods of time. He completely attains the wisdom of all bodhisattvas speaking the Dharma in the Dharma realm. Why is this? He will become a Buddha by bringing forth the mind. You should know that this person is equal with all Buddhas in the 3 periods of time. He is equal with the states of all Buddhas, as come ones of the 3 periods of time. And he is equal with the merit and virtue of all Buddhas, thus come one of the 3 periods of time. He obtains the thus come one single body and limitless bodies, and the ultimately equal, true, and actual knowledge and wisdom. Upon bringing forth the mind, all Buddhas of the 10 directions simultaneously praise him. Immediately he is able to speak the Dharma, to teach, transform, regulate, and subdue all living beings in all world systems. He is able to shake all world systems. He is able to shine his light upon all world systems. He is able to eliminate the evil paths of suffering of all world systems. He is able to adorn and purify all lands. And within all world systems, he is able to manifest the realization of Buddhahood.
He is able to cause all living beings to obtain happiness. He is able to enter the nature of all Dharma realms. He is able to uphold the seed nature of all Buddhas. He is able to obtain all Buddha's light of wisdom. There's not the smallest thing in the 3 periods of time which this Bodhisattva who first bring forth the mind does not obtain. That is to say, whether it be Buddhas or Buddha Dharma, Bodhisattva or Bodhisattva Dharma,
solitarily enlightened ones or the Dharmas are solitarily enlightened ones, Sanghiras or the Dharmas or Sanghiras, that which belongs to the world or worldly Dharmas, that which is transcendental or transcendental Dharmas, or living beings or the Dharmas are living beings. He only seeks all wisdom and towards all Dharma realms, his mind is without attachment. At that time, because of the Buddha's spiritual power, world system as many as the decimals in 10,000 Buddha Kashajas in each of the 10 directions shook in 6 ways, which are shaking, pervasive shaking, and equal pervasive shaking, surging, pervasive surging, and equal pervasive surging, rising, pervasive rising, equal pervading rising, quaking, pervasive quaking, and equal pervasive quaking, roaring, pervading, roaring, and equal pervading, roaring, crashing, pervasive crashing, and equal pervasive crashing. Further,
there rain down a multitude of heavenly flowers, heavenly incense, heavenly powder incense, heavenly flower garland, heavenly garments, heavenly jewel, an article of heavenly adornment. Heavenly music was played, and there was a emitting of heavenly light, as well as heavenly sounds.
At that time, passing beyond world system as numerous as decimals in 10 Buddha Kashajas. In each of the 10 directions were Buddhas as numerous as decimals in 10,000 Buddha Kashajas, who all had the same name, Dharma wisdom. Each manifested a body before Dharma wisdom, Bodhisattva, and spoke these words: good indeed, Dharma wisdom, you now are one who is able to speak the Dharma. We Buddha as numerous as the decimals in 10,000 Kashajas in each of the 10 directions also speak this Dharma. All Buddhas speak in this way too. At the time you spoke this Dharma, there were Bodhisattva as numerous as the decimals in 10,000 Buddha Kashajas who brought forth the Bodhi mind. We now all confer upon them a prediction that in the future, beyond 1,000 ineffable boundless kalpas, within the same kalpa they will become Buddhas, appear in the world, and they will all have a title, pure mind, thus come one. The world systems in which they dwell will each be different. We all uphold this Dharma to cause all Bodhisattvas in future worlds who have never heard it before to all hear it. As this Dharma is spoken on the summits of Mount Sumeru in this Saha world, within these 4 continents under heaven, thus causing all living beings to hear it, and afterwards be transformed by it, so too, throughout the 10 directions, in hundreds of thousands of millions, nayutas, countless, limitless, boundless, unequaled, uncountable, inestimable, inconceivable, immeasurable, ineffable world systems, which exhaust the Dharma realm and the realm of empty space. The Dharma is also spoken to each and transform living beings. The ones who speak this Dharma have the same name, Dharma wisdom. Because of the Buddha's spiritual power, because of the power of the world honor one's basic vows, in order to reveal the Buddha Dharma, in order that the light of wisdom shines everywhere, because of the desire to explain true principles, in order to effect the certification to the Dharma nature, in order to cause the assembly to all be happy, because of the desire to reveal the causes of the Buddha Dharma, in order to obtain the Buddha's equality, and in order to comprehend the Dharma realms are without non-duality. They speak the Dharma like this. At that time, Dharma wisdom Bodhisattva universally contemplated, exhausting the realm of space, all the multitudes of assemblies in the lands of the 10 directions, because he desired to bring all living beings to accomplishment, because he desired to totally purify all karmic retribution, because he desired to totally reveal the purity of the Dharma realm, because he desired to pull out the fundamental root of defilement, because he desired to increase vast grace, faith, and understanding, because he desired to bring about knowledge of all the roots of limitless living beings. because he desired to bring about the knowledge of the equality or dharmas of the three periods of time, because he desired to bring about the contemplation of the realm of nirvana, and because he desired to increase his own good words of purity, he received the Buddha's awesome power and spoke these words. Namo Samanta Modana Palati Hata Chajanani Ajimi Jimi Tanta Gata Namo Vasante Palati Wudan Modan Takata Namo Vahum Pans Namo Samanta Modana Palati Hata Chajanani Ajimi Jimi Tanta Gata Namo Vasante Palati Wudan Modan Takata Namo Saho Namo Samanto Modana Poladi Hado Jajanani Anjimi Jimi Tanta Gata Namo Vasante Poladi Wudan Modan Gata Namo Vahom Pan Saha. Praise for the third assembly. Seated beneath the Bodhi tree, he does not move yet, ascends to the heavens. The heavenly cage chakra welcomes him from afar. With throne already perfectly arranged, the king of enlightenment proclaims his sound, and the myriad existent things all hear it. Here's a special dedication for merit. We dedicate the marriage to the approval of the height variance for the wonderful Enlightenment Buddhist Institute at the public hearing. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace, with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless nights. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. 3 bows. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Nam mô Ta Phật Quảng Phật Hoa Yên Trì Hoa
will continue Flower Dharma Sutra, chapter 17, bringing forth the merit and virtue from bringing forth the mind. Merit and virtue from first bringing forth the mind, chapter 17. In the book is page 13, the verses, starting from the verses, the beginning of verses. Fundamental teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo fundamental teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo fundamental teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Flower Adornment Sutra, Merit and Virtue from First Bringing Forth the Mind, chapter 17. In order to benefit the world, he brings forth the great mind. This mind pervades everywhere in the 10 directions. The dharmas of living beings lengthen the 3 periods of time. Also the most supreme sea of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, ultimately like space and equal to the Dharma realm. All the world systems which exist. He goes to wherever there is the Buddha or the Dharma. In this way he brings forth the mind without ever retreating. He is kindly mindful of living beings without forsaking them for a moment. Leaving afflictions and harm, he universally benefits them. His light shines upon the world as a place of refuge. The protective mindfulness from the 10 powers is difficult to conceive of. The 10 directions countries he completely enters. All forms and shapes are totally made manifest. Just as the Buddha's blessings and wisdom are vast and boundless, so he accordingly cultivates their causes without any attachments. There are abiding kshetras facing upwards or facing downwards, coarse, wondrous, or wide, of limitless kinds. The Bodhisattva who first brings forth the most supreme mind is able to go to all of them without obstruction. The Bodhisattva's superior conducts are ineffable. He cultivates all of them without dwelling anywhere. He sees all Buddhas and is continuously blissful, and universally enters the most profound ocean of Dharma. With pity for the flocks of beings in the 5 destinies, he causes them to eradicate their defilements and be universally pure, so that the Buddha's seed continues to flourish without being cut off. He destroys the demons' palaces without remainder. He already abides in the level nature of the thus come ones. He well cultivates the path of the subtly wondrous skill in means towards the state of the Buddhas. He gives rise to a heart of faith, and he receives the Buddha's anointing, his crown, with the mind devoid of attachments. At the place of the doubly perfected honor ones, he is mindful of repaying their kindness. His mind is like Vajra, indestructible. He can clearly comprehend the Buddha's conduct and spontaneously cultivates the conduct of Bodhi. All the destinies are different with thoughts measureless. The coming results in minds are also not of one kind, up to and including the various differentiations of the root natures. Upon first bringing forth the great mind, one can clearly see them all. The mind is vast and expansive, equal to the Dharma realm, without reliance and unchanging like space. One tends towards the Buddha's wisdom without any grasping, and comprehends the limit of reality without discriminations. He knows the minds of living beings without the thoughts of living beings. He penetratingly understands dharmas without having thoughts or dharmas. Although there are differences everywhere, he is without discriminations as he travels through all the millions of layutas of kshetras. With the treasury of the wondrous dharmas of limitless Buddhas, he accosts, contemplates, and enters. He knows all living beings' basic practices and reaches a place like that of the world honor. With pure, great, and appropriate vows, he delights in making offerings to the thus come ones without retreating. People and gods never grow weary of seeing him, and he is always one of whom the Buddhas are protective and mindful. His mind is pure and does not rely on anything. Although he contemplates profound dharmas, he does not grasp at them. He considers them like these four limitless kalpas. In the 3 periods of time, he is without any attachments. His mind is solid and difficult to defeat. He tends towards Buddha's Bodhi without obstruction. He resolutely seeks the wondrous path which dispels delusions, and he travels throughout the Dhamma without mentioning his talk. He knows that the dharmas of speech are still and extinct. He only enters through suchness of cutting off wrong understanding. He accordingly contemplates the states of all Buddhas and penetrates the 3 periods of time with a mind which is without obstructions. The Bodhisattva, upon first bringing forth the great mind, is immediately able to travel to kshetras everywhere in the 10 directions. Dharma doors are limitless and ineffable. His wisdom, like universally illumined, so that all is understood by him. Great compassion which widely takes beings across is most incomparable. His kind heart pervades everywhere and is equal to space, yet he doesn't discriminate between living beings. With purity like this, he travels in the woods. He pacifies all living beings of the 10 directions. All that he does is true and actual. He always has a pure mind and does not use wrong speech, and is constantly aided and protected by all Buddhas. He is completely mindful of everything in the past. He totally differentiates everything in the future. Universally, he enters the worlds of the 10 directions in order to rescue living beings and effect their escape. The Bodhisattva perfects the wondrous wisdom light and well comprehends causes and conditions without any doubts. All confusion and delusion are completely cut off. In this manner, he travels throughout the Dharma realm. The palaces of demon kings are all broken up. The obscuring cataract of living beings is extinguished. He leaves discriminations and has an unmoving mind, and well comprehends the state of the thus come ones. The net of doubts of the 3 periods of time has already been obliterated. In the presence of the thus come ones, he gives rise to pure faith. By means of faith, he realizes unmoving wisdom. Because of the purity of his wisdom, he understands the true and actual. In order to cause living beings to escape, he universally benefits them, exhausting the boundaries of the future. For a long time he toils, yet his mind is without repulsion, to the extent that he also calmly endures the hells. His blessings and wisdom are limitless and totally perfected. The roots and desires of living beings are all known to him, as well as all of their karma and actions. He speaks the Dharma for them as they like it. He understands that everything is empty and without a self. He has kind thoughts for living beings without ever forsaking them. He enters the world everywhere and proclaims a single subtly wondrous sound of great compassion. He emits great light of various colors, which universally shines upon living beings and eradicates their darkness. Within the light are bodhisattvas seated upon lotus flowers, who for the sake of the multitudes proclaim dharmas of purity. On the tip of a single hair he manifests a multitude of kshetras, and all the great bodhisattvas fill them up. The wisdom of the assemblies are each different. All are able to clearly comprehend the hearts of living beings. The world systems of the 10 directions are ineffable. In a single thought, he pervasively travels to them without exception, benefiting living beings and making offerings to the Buddhas. At the Buddha's place, he asks about the profound meanings.
He thinks of all the skillfulness as a father.
And for the sake of living beings, he cultivates the conduct of awakening. His wisdom and skillful means penetrate the treasury of dharmas, and he enters the place of profound wisdom without any attachments. Complying with their thoughts, he speaks of the Dharma realm, passing through limitless kalpas which cannot be exhausted. Although his wisdom well enters, he is without a dwelling place, being without weariness, satiation, or attachments. He is born in the family of the Buddhas of the 3 periods of time, and is certified to the Daskaman's wondrous Dharma body. Universally, for the sake of the flocks of beings, he appears in many forms. Just like a magician, there is nothing he cannot do. Perhaps he manifests to be beginning his cultivation of the most supreme conducts, or maybe he manifests birth or leaving home, or he manifests realizing Bodhi under the tree, or for the sake of living beings he manifests entry into nirvana. The Bodhisattva abides in rare dharmas. They are solely the states of the Buddha, not that of the 2 vehicles. His body, mouth, and mind have been completely renounced. According to various kinds of opportunities, he is able to manifest the Buddha dharmas which the Bodhisattva has obtained. If living beings would try to consider them, they will go mad. His wisdom enters ultimate reality, and his mind is without obstruction. He universally manifests the Daskaman's power of comfort and ease. In the world he is unequaled. How much the more his ever-increasing supreme conduct. Although he has not perfected all wisdom, yet he has already attained the Daskaman's power of self-mastery. He already abides in the ultimate path of the one vehicle, and deeply enters the subtly wondrous and most supreme Dharma.
He knows what is and is not appropriate for living beings. In order to benefit them, he manifests spiritual penetrations.
His division bodies pervasively fill up all kshetras, emitting pure bright light which dispels the world's darkness. Just like a dragon king who raises a great cloud, everywhere raining down a wondrous rain, so all are satisfied. He knows living beings are like an illusory dream. Because of the force of karma, they always flow and turn. With great compassion and pity, he reaches and pulls them out. And for their sakes, he explains the unconditioned pure Dharma nature. The Buddha's power is limitless, and his is the same way. Just like space, it has no boundaries. In order to cause living beings to obtain liberation, for 1,000,000 kalpas he diligently cultivates, yet does not become weary. With all kinds of meditations, wondrous merit and virtue, he well cultivates the unsurpassed foremost karma. Never renouncing all supreme conduct, he fixes his thoughts on the achievement of all wisdom. One body manifests measureless bodies, which totally pervade all world systems. His mind is pure without discriminations. One thought of his power, which is difficult to conceive of, is like this. With respect to all worlds, he does not discriminate. Regarding all dharmas, he is without false thinking. Although he contemplates all dharmas, he does not grasp at them. He always rescues living beings, yet none are crossed over. All worlds are only thoughts. Within each of them are all kinds of differences. He knows that the state of thoughts is dangerous and deep, and manifests spiritual penetration to rescue beings. Just like the free and easy power of a magician, so too are the Bodhisattva's spiritual transformations. His body pervades the Dharma realm and space. According with the minds of living beings, none do not see him. He is apart from the differentiations of subject and object, and there is no grasping at defilement or purity. Whether bound up or liberated, his wisdom is totally forgotten. He only wishes to bestow happiness on living beings everywhere. All worlds are only the force of thoughts. With wisdom he enters them with a fearless heart. He considers all dharmas in the same way, investigating throughout the 3 periods of time, There is nothing which can be obtained. He is able to enter the past and exhaust the boundary of before. He is able to enter the future and exhaust the boundary of afterwards. He is able to enter all places in the present, constantly and diligently observing them as being non-existent.
He goes along with the still existing Dharma of Nirvana, dwelling without striving and without any reliance. His mind, like ultimate reality, is unequaled. He only goes towards Bodhi without ever retreating.
He cultivates supreme contact without turning back in fear. He is established in Bodhi and unmoving. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the world exhaust the Dharma realm so everything is understood. He wishes to obtain the most supreme foremost path and acts as the king of liberation of all wisdom. He must quickly bring forth the Bodhi mind and forever exhaust all outflows and benefit the flocks of beings. He tends towards Bodhi with the mind of purity. His merit and virtue is expansive, great, and ineffable, which in order to benefit living beings, he names and describes in detail. All of you worthy ones should well listen to him. Rendering all measureless world systems into dust. Within each particle of dust are measureless kshetras. Within each of these are all the measureless Buddhas. He is able to clearly see them all without any grasping, knowing well living beings without giving rise to thoughts, knowing well speech without thoughts of speech. In all worlds his mind is without obstruction, and all is understood well without any attachment. His mind is vast like space. The effects of the three periods of time are all clearly penetrated. All doubts and delusions are totally annihilated.
And he probably contemplates the Buddha Dharma without any grasping to all the limitless lands of the 10 directions. In a single thought he goes with an unattached mind. He penetrates the multitude of dharmas of suffering in the world and totally abides in the unproduced, ultimately reality limits.
To the measureless and difficult to conceive of places of the Buddha's assemblies, he goes and pays homage. He is always a superior leader who inquires of the Daskam ones about all the vows and practices cultivated by the Buddhas. He always recollects the Buddhas of the 10 directions, yet he is without any reliance or grasping. He forever exhorts living beings to plant good roots, adorning countries and causing them to be pure. All the destinies of birth in the 3 states of existence he contemplates with the eye of non-obstruction the nature of all the habits, roots, and understandings, which are measureless and boundless, are all clearly seen. The delights of the hearts of living beings are all clearly known. In this way he accords with the opportunities to speak Dharma. Defilement and purity he totally penetrates, causing beings to cultivate and enter the path. All measureless and countless samadhis the Bodhisattva in a single thought is able to enter. From them his thoughts of wisdom and that which is conditioned are all well understood, and he obtains freedom and ease. The Bodhisattva attains this vast great wisdom and swiftly goes toward Bodhi without any obstruction, because he wishes to benefit the flocks of beings. In every place he propagates the Dharma of great heroes. He well knows long and short kalpas of the worlds, a single month or half a month, down to a day and night. Countries are each different, but their natures are level and equal. He constantly contemplates them diligently without becoming lax. He universally reaches all the worlds of the 10 directions, yet he does not grasp at any location. He adorns and purifies lands totally without remainder, and yet has never given rise to discriminations of purity. Living beings, whether in good places or bad places, with all their different karma, influences and retributions, complying with them, considering them, he enters the Buddha's powers, completely comprehending them all. Their various different natures of all those in the world, their various activities while dwelling in the 3 states of existence, sharp roots, mediocre roots, and inferior roots. In this way all are completely contemplated, the pure and impure, and all kinds of understandings, superior, inferior, and mediocre, all are clearly perceived by him. As for the activities of living beings which lead to various places, he can completely explain their continuation continuation in the three states of existence. Jhanas, concentrations, liberations, and all samadhis, defiled and pure, their causes and arisal each are different. Also included are the different sufferings and pleasures from the past. He purely cultivates the Buddha's power, so all of these can be perceived.
Living beings, karma, and delusions, continuing all destinies, cutting off all destinies, one obtains a still extinction, whereupon all kinds of outflowing dharmas will never again rise. The seeds of these habits are all clearly known.
The thus karma has totally put an end to afflictions. His great wisdom light shines upon the world. With respect to the Buddha's 10 powers, although the Bodhisattva has not yet been certified to them, nonetheless he does not doubt them. The Bodhisattva in a single hairpore universally makes appear the measureless kshetras or the 10 directions, whether they have defilement or purity. All the various kinds of karma created are all understood by him. Within a single particle of dust are measureless kshetras and measureless Buddhas and disciples of the Buddhas. All the kshetras are different but not jumbled. As with one, so too all are clearly perceived. Within a single hairpore are seen the 10 directions, and almost exhausting the realm of space, there is not a single place which is empty without a Buddha. In this way, the Buddha kshetras are totally purified. Within a single hairpore are seen Buddha kshetras, and also are seen all living beings. The 6 paths of the 3 periods of time are each different. In the time of days, nights, and months, they are liberated or bound. In this way, the Bodhisattvas of great wisdom single-mindedly tend towards the position of Dharma King. They compliantly consider where the Buddhas dwell and obtain boundless great happiness. The Bodhisattvas' division bodies, measured as millions, make offerings to all thus come ones with spiritual penetrations which transformationally appear supreme and unequaled. He is able to dwell in all the places where the Buddhas practiced. Measureless Buddha's faces are all penetrated and gazed upon. All the treasury of dharmas are doted upon and savored. He sees the Buddhas, hears the Dharma, and diligently cultivates. As if drinking sweet dew, his heart is delighted. He has already obtained the Daskama supreme samadhis. He well enters all dharmas and his wisdom increases. With a heart of faith unmoving like Sumeru, he acts as the treasury of merit and virtue for living beings everywhere. His kind heart is vast and pervades living beings. He vows that they will quickly realize all wisdom, yet he is always without attachment or place of reliance. Apart from all afflictions, he has obtained freedom and ease. He sympathizes with living beings using vast wisdom, and everywhere gathers in all the same as himself. He knows they are empty, without appearance or actuality, yet he cultivates, and his mind neither becomes lax nor retreats. The measure of the merit and virtue of a bodhisattva's bringing forth the resolve cannot be completely lauded even for millions of kalpas, because it produces all thus karmas. The solitarily enlightened ones and sound hearers are peaceful and happy. All living beings in the lands of the 10 directions are all given peace for measureless kalpas. He exhorts them to uphold the 5 precepts and the 10 goods, and the 4 jhanas and the stations of the other 4 concentrations. Moreover, for many kalpas he bestows peace and happiness, causing them to sever delusions and become arhats. Although the collections of blessings is immeasurable, it does not compare to the merit and virtue from bringing forth the mind. He also teaches the millions of multitudes to become enlightened to conditions, so they obtain the practice of non-contention of the subtly wondrous path. It that were used to gauge the Bodhi mind, neither calculations nor analogies could compare to it. Within a single thought he is able to traverse kshetras as numerous as dust motes. In this way he passes through measureless kalpas. The numbers of these kshetras can still be measured, but the merit and virtue from bringing forth the mind cannot be known. In the past, future, and present, the number of all kalpas is without limit or measure. The number of these kalpas can still be known, but the merit and virtue from bringing forth the mind is unfathomable. Using the Bodhi-mind to pervade the 10 directions, there are no differentiations which are not known. In a single thought, the 3 periods of time are all clearly penetrated. Thereby he benefits measureless living beings. The living beings of the world systems of the 10 directions, their desires, understandings, expedient methods, intentions, and what they do, as well as the bounds of space, can still be fathomed, but the measure of the merit and virtue from first bringing forth the mind is hard to know. The Bodhisattva's vows are equal to the 10 directions. His kind heart permeates the flocks of beings everywhere. All are caused to cultivate and accomplish the Buddha's merit and virtue. Therefore his power is boundless. Living beings' desires, understanding, and what delights their hearts, their roots and the expedient methods they practice are each different. Within a single thought all are understood. All wisdom and the wisdom mind are equal and the same. All living beings' delusions and karma continue throughout the 3 realms without momentary interruption. The limits of these can still be known, but the merit and virtue from bringing forth the mind is difficult to conceive. By bringing forth the mind, one is able to separate from the afflictions of karma and make offerings to all thus come ones. When karma and delusion are left behind and the continuity is severed, everywhere throughout the 3 periods of time one is liberated. In a single thought he makes offerings to boundless Buddhas and also makes offerings to numberless living beings. He uses incense, flowers, and wondrous garlands, jewels, banners, flags, canopies, and superior garments, flavorful food, thrones of gems, and promenades. All kinds of palaces are totally adorned. There are Varachana, wondrous, precious pearls, and as you will, manis which produce dazzling light. In thought after thought like this, he presents them as offerings, passing through measureless kalpas which are ineffable. This person's accumulation of blessings though great, is not as great as the merit and virtue from bringing forth the mind. Of all the various analogies which can be spoken, none are able to reach the Bodhi mind. The honored ones among humans in the 3 periods of time are all born from bringing forth the resolve. Bringing forth the mind is without obstruction and without a particular limit. Those wishing to find its measure cannot attain it. He vows to certainly perfect the wisdom of all wisdom, so all living beings are crossed over forever. Bringing forth the mind is like empty space. It produces merit and virtue which is the same as the Dharma realm. All that is done pervades everywhere without difference. Forever separating from the multitude of attachments, he is equal to the Buddha. Of all Dhamma doors none are not entered. He is able to go to all lands. The states of all wisdom are totally penetrated. As all merit and virtue he perfects. He is able to renounce everything continuously and forever. He is pure in the categories of precepts and without any attachments, replete with unsurpassed great merit and virtue. He is always diligent and vigorous without retreating. He enters profound jhana concentrations and is always meditating. His vast wisdom mutually responds. This is the Bodhisattva's most supreme ground, which produces all the paths of universal worthy. Of all the Daskamans of the 3 periods of time, there are none who are not mindfully protective of one who first brings forth the mind completely by means of samadhi dharani. Spiritual penetrations and transformations is adorned. Living beings of the 10 directions are without measure. World systems and empty space are also like this. Bringing forth the mind is without measure and surpasses them. Therefore it is able to produce all Buddhas. The Bodhi mind is the basis of all 10 powers. It is also the foundation of the 4 eloquences and fearlessnesses. The 18 uncommon dhammas are also like this. There are none which are not obtained from bringing forth the mind. The characteristics of the Buddhas form their bodies of adornment, as well as their equal and wondrous Dharma body, wisdom, non-attachment, and the one who is worthy of offerings, all by means of bringing forth the mind come to be. the vehicles of all the solitary enlightened ones and sound hearers, the bliss of dhyana samadhi of the form realm, as well as the samadhis of the formless realm. Bringing forth the mind acts as the basis for all of them, the free and easy bliss of humans and gods, as well as the various joys of all the destinies, and the multitude of happiness from the roots and powers of vigor, concentrations, and the others. All of those come from bringing forth the mind. By means of the cause of bringing forth the vast mind, one is then able to cultivate the 6 paramitas, encouraging all beings to practice proper conduct and to receive peace and happiness within the triple realm. Dwelling in the Buddha's unobstructed wisdom of the genuine meaning, all wondrous karma is completely proclaimed. He is able to cause measureless living beings to totally cut off delusion and karma and to go towards nirvana. His wisdom light is like the pure sun. His many practices are perfect like the full moon. His merit and virtue is always overflowing like the great ocean. He is undefiled and unobstructed, just like empty space, everywhere producing vows of limitless merit and virtue, all of which bestow happiness upon all living beings, exhausting the boundaries of the future, relying on vows to practice. He always diligently cultivates to cross over living beings. His measureless great vows are difficult to conceive. He vows to cause living beings to be completely pure. His vows are empty, without appearances or a place or reliance. Because of the strength of his vows, everything clearly manifests. He comprehends that the self-nature is like empty space, still and extinct and totally equal. Dhammados are numberless and ineffable. For the sake of living beings, he proclaims them without any attachments. All the Daskamas of the world systems of the 10 directions, altogether Lord bringing forth of the mind. This mind is measureless and adorned with virtue. It is able to arrive at the other shore, the same as the Buddha. Throughout kalpas as numerous as living beings, in speaking of its merit and virtue, still it cannot be exhausted. It abides in the vast household of the Daskam ones. No dharmas of the triple realm can compare with it. Desiring to know all Buddha dharmas, one should quickly bring forth the Bodhi-mind. The mind amongst all merit and virtue is the most supreme. One will certainly obtain the Daskaman's unobstructed wisdom. The activities in the minds of living beings can be calculated and known. Lens particles of dust are the same way. The limits of space can readily be measured, yet the merit and virtue from bringing forth the mind cannot be fathomed. It produces all Buddhas of the 3 periods of time. It achieves all the happiness of the worlds, increasing all supreme merit and virtue. It forever cuts off all doubts and delusions, revealing and proclaiming all wondrous states, exhaustively doing away with all obstructions. It brings to completion all pure kshetras and produces the wisdom of all Daskam ones. If one wishes to see all Buddhas of the 10 directions, if one wishes to give an inexhaustible treasury of merit and virtue, and if one wants to put an end to living beings' sufferings and afflictions, one should quickly bring forth the Bodhi-mind. End of chapter 17. Praise for the third assembly. Seated beneath the Bodhi tree, he does not move yet ascends to the heavens. The heavenly King Chakra welcomes him from afar. With throne already perfectly arranged, the King of Enlightenment proclaims his sound, and the myriad existing things all hear it. Now we will recite chapter 22. Chapter 22. The 10 inexhaustible treasuries. Flower Adornment Sutra. The 10 Inexhaustible Treasuries, Chapter 22. At that time, Forest Merriam Virtue Bodhisattva further told all the Bodhisattvas, disciples of the Buddha, Bodhisattvas Mahasattvas have 10 kinds of treasuries, which all the Buddhas of the past have spoken about, all the Buddhas of the future will speak about, and all the Buddhas of the present are speaking about. What are the 10? They are the treasury of belief, the treasury of precepts, the treasury of shame, the treasury of remorse, the treasury of learning, the treasury of giving, the treasury of wisdom, the treasury of mindfulness, the treasury of upholding, and the treasury of eloquence. Those are the 10. Disciples of the Buddha, what is the Bodhisattva Mahasattva's treasury of belief? These Bodhisattvas believe that all dhammas are empty. They believe that all dhammas are without an appearance. They believe that all dhammas are wishless. They believe that all dhammas are without creation. They believe that all dhammas are without distinctions. They believe that all dhammas are without reliance. They believe that all dhammas are not able to be measured. They believe that all dhammas are unsurpassed. They believe that all dhammas are difficult to transcend. They believe that all dhammas are without production. If bodhisattvas can accord with all dhammas in this way, then after they give rise to pure belief, when they hear that all Buddha dhammas are inconceivable, their minds are not afraid. When they hear that all Buddhas are inconceivable, their minds are not afraid. When they hear that the realm of living beings is inconceivable, their minds are not afraid. When they hear that the realm of empty space is inconceivable, their minds are not afraid. When they hear that the realm of nirvana is inconceivable, their minds are not afraid. When they hear that the past is inconceivable, their minds are not afraid. When they hear that the future is inconceivable, their minds are not afraid. When they hear that the present is inconceivable, their minds are not afraid. When they hear that entering every kalpa is inconceivable, their minds are not afraid. Why not? These bodhisattvas residing in the places of Buddhas have thoroughly solid faith. They know that the Buddha's wisdom is boundless and inexhaustible. In each and every one of the limitless worlds of the 10 directions, there are limitless Buddhas who have already attained, are now attaining, or will attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. They have already come into the world, are now coming into the world, or will come into their world. They have already entered Nirvana, are now entering Nirvana, or will enter Nirvana. The wisdom of these Buddhas does not increase, does not decrease, is not produced, is not destroyed, does not progress, does not retreat, is not near, is not far, is without knowing and without rejecting. These bodhisattvas enter into the Buddha's wisdom and accomplish boundless, inexhaustible belief. After they attain this belief, their minds do not retreat, their minds do not become scattered or confused. They are indestructible and undefiled. They always have a foundation. They accord with sages and dwell in the household of the Daskamans. They protect the seed nature of all Buddhas. They increase the faith and understandings of all bodhisattvas. They comply with all Daskamans' gurus, and they give rise to the experience of all Buddhas. This is called the Bodhisattvas Mahasattvas treasury of belief. When bodhisattvas dwell in this treasury of belief, they can hear and uphold all the Buddha dhammas, speak it for living beings, and enable them to become enlightened. Disciples of the Buddha, what is the Bodhisattva Mahasattva's treasury of precepts? These bodhisattvas accomplish precepts which are universally beneficial, precepts of non-reception, precepts of non-dwelling, precepts of being without regret, precepts of being without contention, precepts of never harming, precepts of being without defilement, precepts of being without greed or seeking, precepts of never making mistakes, and precepts of never making violations. What are the precepts which are universally beneficial? These bodhisattvas receive and uphold pure precepts for the fundamental reason of benefiting all living beings. What are the precepts of non-reception? These bodhisattvas do not receive or practice any of the precepts of external paths. Of their own nature, they are vigorous, and they respectfully uphold an equal and pure precepts of all Buddhas, thus karmas, throughout the 3 periods of time. What are the precepts of non-dwelling? When these bodhisattvas receive and uphold precepts, their minds do not dwell in the desire realm, they do not dwell in the form realm, and they do not dwell in the formless realm. Why not? Because they do not uphold the precepts with the hope of being born in those places. What are the precepts of being without regret? These bodhisattvas always rest in thoughts free from remorse or regret. Why? Because they do not commit heavy offenses, they do not practice flattery or deceit, and they do not break the pure precepts. What are the precepts of non-contention? These bodhisattvas do not criticize what is already established, how much the less try to set things up their own way. Their minds are always in accord with precepts that tend toward nirvana, completely receiving and upholding them and not violating them, nor do they use precepts as a way to disturb other beings, causing them to give rise to suffering. It is only because they want everyone to always be happy that they uphold the precepts. What are the precepts of never harming? These bodhisattvas do not rely on precepts to study deceptive mantras or create potions in order to harm living beings. It is only for the sake of rescuing and protecting living beings that they uphold the precepts. What are the precepts of being without admixture? These bodhisattvas do not attach to prejudiced views, nor do they hold a mixture of precepts. They only contemplate the arisal of conditions and uphold the world-transcending precepts. What are the precepts of being without greed or seeking? These bodhisattvas do not manifest strange appearances or display their own virtue. It is only for the sake of perfecting the dharmas of escape that they hold the precepts. What are the precepts of never erring? These bodhisattvas do not aggrandize themselves and say, uphold precepts. When they see people who have violated precepts, they do not slight or slander them or cause them to feel remorseful, but they simply single-mindedly hold the precepts. What are the precepts of never making violations? These bodhisattvas have eternally severed killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, double-tongued speech, harsh speech, unprincipled speech, greed, hatred, and deviant views. They thoroughly uphold the 10 good deeds. When those bodhisattvas uphold these precepts of never making violations, they have this thought: all living beings violate the pure precepts because they are upside down. Only the Buddhas, world-honored ones, can know the causes and conditions that make living beings upside down, so they violate the pure precepts. I should accomplish unsurpassed bodhi and extensively proclaim true and actual dharmas for living beings, so they can separate from being upside down. This is called the Bodhisattvas Mahasattvas' second treasury, that are precepts. Namo Sammanto Motona Apalati Hatacha Janani Nachimi Jim Dantakatana Mawa Shanti Balati Uddamata Dantakatana Mawa Hompasaha Namo Sammanto Motona Apalati Hatacha Janani Nachimi Jim Dantakatana Mawa Shanti Balati Uddamata Dantakatana Mawa Hompasaha Namo Sammanto Motona Apalati Hatocha Janami Jimi Dantakatana Mawa Shanti Balati Uttamotam Dantakatana Mawa Hompa So Praise for the fourth assembly. In the ocean of practices, the waves surge and billow. Clouds display their doors of kindness. Up in the Yama, having cloud-like multitudes arrive, they circumambulate the honored Dharma King. Flowers rain down in colorful profusion, and the entire assembly is majestically present. We have a special dedication. We dedicate the merit to the approval of the height variance for the Wonderful Enlightenment Buddhist Institute at the public hearing. multiplication of merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiance with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, may all sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. 3 bows. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Namo